Rain dripped through the blackened frame of my roof while firefighters rolled up their hoses and walked away. Everything I owned still smelled like smoke. I stood in the middle of the street, holding a warped family photo album against my chest, when my brother Marcus pulled up in a shiny black SUV like he was arriving for a business meeting instead of a disaster. Before we continue, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell for updates. He stepped out, glanced once at the burned house, then held up a stack of papers. "Ronelle, we need to handle the insurance claim immediately." I stared at him. "My house just burned down, and if you don't sign this tonight, the payout could get delayed for months," he snapped. "You want that?" My hands were shaking so badly I could barely turn the pages. I was still wearing borrowed sweatpants from a neighbor. My phone had melted in the fire. Half my hair smelled like smoke. Marcus pointed to the signature line. "The insurance company only wants one representative handling communication. Let me take care of it." I should have stopped right there. Instead, I signed. 3 days later, Marcus checked into a downtown hotel suite with the insurance money and dropped me at a roadside motel with enough cash for exactly 3 nights. When I asked where the rest of the payout went, he leaned against his SUV and said calmly, "I handled everything. The property's under my responsibility now." I blinked at him. "What are you talking about?" "Mom left that house to me." Marcus smirked. "I filed joint ownership paperwork. I maintained the property for years. Legally, it's more complicated than you think." That was the first moment I realized my own brother had been planning something before the fire was even cold. A week later, I drove back to the house with a trash bag full of clothes and begged him to let me stay in one of the undamaged rooms until I figured something out. Cleanup workers stood nearby pulling burned furniture onto the lawn while Marcus changed the locks. "Marcus, please," I whispered. "I have nowhere to go." He laughed without even looking at me. "Sleep outside if you have to." The workers went silent. One man actually stopped carrying debris and stared at Marcus like he couldn't believe what he'd heard, but nobody said anything while I stood there humiliated in front of my own home. That night, I slept in my car behind a grocery store parking lot. Around 2 in the morning, I replayed a voicemail from the insurance company for the 4th time. "Miss Carter, we still haven't received the supplemental documentation connected to your claim. Supplemental documentation?" I frowned at the dashboard clock. Marcus told me everything had already been finalized. The next morning, I opened my mailbox at the motel office and found court papers folded inside. My stomach dropped before I even finished reading them. Marcus wasn't just taking the insurance money, he was trying to force the sale of my house before I could stop him. Ronelle had spent the entire drive to Marcus's office rehearsing calm sentences in her head. Not accusations, not threats, just questions. By the time she stepped into the polished lobby of Carter Restoration Group, her palms were damp with sweat. Employees moved around carrying folders and coffee trays while Marcus's name sat in silver letters behind the reception desk. Successful. Respected. Untouchable. The receptionist gave Ronelle a strained smile. "He's expecting you." Of course he was. Marcus sat behind a massive walnut desk when she entered his office. He didn't stand up, didn't ask how she was sleeping, didn't mention the fire. Instead, he folded his hands together and said, "You shouldn't be running around filing objections without legal advice." Ronelle stayed standing. "Why did the insurance money go into your account?" Marcus sighed like she was exhausting him. "Because someone had to manage things responsibly. It was my policy. And you signed authorization forms." His voice stayed calm, controlled, almost parental. "You don't understand how complicated property disputes become after a fire, Ronelle. You have no savings, no attorney, no stable place to live. You need help, not conflict." That tone hit harder than yelling ever could, because it sounded familiar. Years earlier, After their mother got sick, Marcus had handled every hospital bill, every legal document, every account transfer. Whenever Ronelle asked questions, he always said the same thing: leave paperwork to me. Now he leaned back in his chair and repeated another old line: Mom trusted me because I know how the world works. Ronelle looked around the office and suddenly noticed something strange. Family photos covered the walls, but every picture, including her mother, had been removed except one. In that frame, Marcus stood alone beside her. The office door cracked open quietly. A nervous legal assistant stepped inside holding a folder. She avoided Marcus's eyes as she placed a single photocopied document near Ronelle's hand. You asked for the filing copy, she mumbled before quickly leaving. Marcus's jaw tightened instantly. Ronelle picked up the document and scanned the dates. Then she froze. The ownership transfer filing had been submitted before the insurance payout was even approved. How is this possible? She whispered. Marcus stood up slowly. That paperwork isn't your concern. 10 minutes later, Ronelle confronted him again in the underground parking garage. The polished businessman act was gone now. You filed ownership claims before the claim was processed, she said. You planned this. Marcus stepped closer until his shadow covered her. If you fight this in court, he said quietly, you'll end up homeless for real. For the first time, Ronelle stopped seeing him as her older brother. She saw someone trying to corner her. That night, the motel clerk slid her card twice before shaking his head. Sorry, declined. Ronelle walked back outside into the cold and sat inside her car staring at Marcus's contact number. After a long silence, she called him anyway. Marcus, I just need a little more time. You should have learned to survive without people. Click. The line went dead. Hours later, while digging through the few items recovered from the fire, Ronelle opened a scorched fireproof box she barely remembered saving. Inside sat an old brass key taped to an envelope in her mother's handwriting. 3 words were written across the front: court file, keep safe. The courthouse hallway buzzed with conversation the moment Ronelle stepped through the security doors. Attorneys shuffled between courtrooms. Reporters leaned against walls, scrolling through phones. 2 neighbors from her old street whispered when they saw her. Then Marcus arrived. He walked through the crowd in a tailored navy suit like he owned the building, shaking hands with people who recognized him from his construction company. There she is, he announced loudly when he spotted Ronelle. I've been trying to help my sister through all this. Several people turned toward him sympathetically. Ronelle felt their eyes slide toward her afterward, tired clothes, sleepless face, hands clenched around her folder. Marcus kept talking. The fire hit her hard. I've been handling everything because she's overwhelmed. One of their distant cousins nodded slowly. You're a good man for stepping in. Ronelle opened her mouth to respond, but Marcus had already guided the conversation away from her like she wasn't even there. Inside the courtroom, things got worse. Marcus's attorney stood confidently before the judge and laid out stacks of financial records. Mr. Carter invested substantial personal funds into maintaining the property over the years, the attorney argued. Following the fire, he acted in good faith to preserve the remaining value of the home. Ronelle's stomach twisted hearing her own house described like a business asset. Then Marcus himself took the stand. She's emotional right now, he said carefully. I didn't want her burdened with complicated legal matters after losing everything. The judge adjusted his glasses. Miss Carter, if you objected to the payout distribution, why did you wait so long to challenge it? Before Ronelle could answer, Marcus spoke first. Because she trusted me to handle things. A few people in the courtroom nodded. Ronelle could actually feel herself losing control of the room. Her hands tightened around the brass key inside her coat pocket. Then she stood. There's something connected to my mother's estate, she said shakily. I found this after the fire. She placed the key on the clerk's desk. The judge frowned. What exactly does this open? I don't know, Ronelle admitted, but my mother labeled it court file. That changed the atmosphere instantly. The judge ordered a recess while a court clerk searched archived estate records connected to their mother's probate case. For the first time all morning, Marcus stopped smiling. An hour later, the clerk returned carrying a sealed document box. The judge reviewed several pages silently before looking up. It appears, he said slowly, that your mother amended portions of her estate shortly before her death. Marcus straightened immediately. That amendment was temporary. The judge ignored him and continued reading. Specifically, Mr. Carter was removed from direct authority over the property. Whispers spread through the courtroom. Marcus leaned toward his attorney and muttered something sharply before standing again. This has nothing to do with the insurance dispute, he insisted. My sister is trying to complicate matters emotionally. The judge closed the file. Then all financial records connected to the claim will be submitted in full. Outside the courthouse, reporters gathered near the front steps while Marcus grabbed Ronelle's arm hard enough to stop her walking. His voice dropped low. You have no idea what you just started. Before Ronelle could answer, her phone rang. Unknown number. She answered cautiously. Hello? A tired male voice responded immediately. Miss Carter, this is the Insurance Investigation Department. There's a signature issue we need to discuss immediately. Ronelle met the insurance investigator the next morning inside a cramped records office above a downtown claims center. Dusty file boxes lined the walls. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. The investigator, a middle-aged man named Daniel Reeves, slid several photocopied forms across the table. We compared signatures from your policy records to the authorization documents submitted after the fire, he said carefully. They don't match. Ronelle stared down at the pages. One signature looked close enough to fool someone glancing quickly. But it wasn't hers. You're saying Marcus signed these? Daniel hesitated. I'm saying someone did. He opened another folder. The payout was transferred into accounts connected to your brother's contracting business less than 48 hours after approval. Ronelle's chest tightened. So he already spent it? Large portions of it, yes. Daniel rubbed his forehead before continuing. I should tell you concerns were raised earlier, but your brother has a strong reputation locally. People trusted him. That sentence sat heavily in the room. Trusted him. The same reason nobody questioned him taking control after the fire, the same reason neighbors believed his version of events over hers. Suddenly, every strange detail connected together in Ronelle's mind. Marcus pushing paperwork immediately after the fire. Marcus filing ownership claims unusually fast. Marcus isolating her from every legal conversation. None of it had been panic. It had been preparation. Daniel flipped to another page. There's something else you need to know. Your brother attempted to schedule demolition of the property before ownership proceedings concluded. Ronelle looked up sharply. What? The request was delayed because of the court dispute. A cold feeling spread through her stomach. The basement safe. The one part of the house firefighters said survived structurally. If the house had been demolished early, everything inside would have disappeared with it. Daniel carefully removed several sealed copies of handwritten letters from another envelope. These were recovered during evidence review. Ronelle recognized her mother's handwriting instantly. Her fingers trembled as she read the first page. If Marcus ever tries to control the property, these records explain why I changed my estate filings. Ronelle swallowed hard. The next pages detailed incidents from years earlier, loan applications, account forms, signatures her mother believed Marcus forged while handling family finances. Her mother had documented everything quietly, every suspicion, every warning. Meanwhile, across town, investigators had already begun reviewing Marcus's company banking records. And Marcus knew it. That evening, he called Ronelle for the first time in days. His tone had changed completely. "We can settle this privately," he said quickly. "You withdraw the objections, and I'll transfer part of the money back." Part. Ronelle stared out through her windshield at the dark parking lot around her. For weeks, she had begged him for help. Now he was bargaining. "No," she said. Silence hit the line. Then Marcus spoke again, colder this time. "You're making a mistake." Ronelle hung up. The final hearing arrived 2 days later. Marcus walked into the courtroom wearing the same confident expression he'd carried since the beginning. When questioned, he dismissed the entire dispute with a calm shrug. "This is family resentment over money," he told the judge. Nothing more. The judge said nothing. He simply reviewed file after file in complete silence while the courtroom waited. Marcus glanced toward Ronelle and smirked faintly. Then the judge closed one folder and looked toward the clerk. "Before this court concludes," he said slowly, "there's one more file that hasn't been entered into record." The courtroom doors opened. A clerk wheeled and sealed financial archives connected to their mother's estate. And for the first time since the fire, Marcus looked afraid. The courtroom went completely silent as the clerk rolled the sealed archive box toward the judge's bench. Marcus's attorney stood halfway out of his chair. "Your Honor, we were not informed. You were informed yesterday evening." The judge interrupted without looking up. Marcus's confidence started slipping in small ways first. His jaw tightened. One hand kept tapping against the defense table. The judge opened the archive carefully and removed several notarized documents bound together with faded legal tabs. "These records," he said, "were attached to amendments made by the late Eleanor Carter approximately 8 months before her death." Ronelle stopped breathing for a moment when she heard her mother's name spoken aloud. The judge continued reading. "Mrs. Carter established a protected trust and emergency compensation account solely under Ronelle Carter's ownership." A murmur spread through the courtroom. Marcus immediately leaned toward his attorney. "That's impossible." But the judge kept going. The amendments also removed Marcus Carter from any direct authority involving the property, insurance oversight, or estate distribution. Ronelle's eyes slowly moved toward her brother. For weeks, he had spoken with absolute certainty. Now his face had gone pale. The judge lifted another document. In a written statement attached to these filings, Mrs. Carter expressed concern that Marcus Carter had previously forged financial signatures connected to family accounts and property matters. Marcus shot to his feet. "This is ridiculous," he snapped. "Those were misunderstandings. Clerical mistakes." The judge's voice hardened instantly. "Sit down, Mr. Carter." Marcus froze, then slowly lowered himself back into his chair while every person in the courtroom stared at him. The insurance investigator, Daniel Reeves, was called forward next. He testified that the protected reserve account tied to the home had existed for years and had been legally connected to Ronelle alone before the fire ever happened. The original insurance payout Marcus redirected was only part of the total funds available. The protected reserve account held significantly more money, and Marcus had never known it existed. Daniel then confirmed investigators found evidence that Marcus pressured insurance employees to rush transfers before fraud reviews could be completed. The courtroom atmosphere changed completely after that. Relatives who had supported Marcus earlier wouldn't even look at him anymore. One of the neighbors who once praised him quietly shook his head in disbelief. Marcus's attorney looked defeated. Then the final blow landed. A forensic document examiner confirmed the signatures authorizing the payout transfers did not belong to Ronelle. They matched Marcus's handwriting patterns instead. Marcus finally lost control. "This is insane," he shouted suddenly. "I was trying to protect the property." "You attempted to seize it," the judge replied sharply. Marcus opened his mouth again, but nothing came out. Ronelle watched the strongest person in her life unravel in real time. His hands shook visibly now. His voice cracked every time he tried speaking. The man who laughed and told her to sleep outside suddenly looked small. The judge began listing consequences one by one. The forced sale of the Carter property is hereby voided. Marcus lowered his head. All disputed funds are frozen pending fraud prosecution. His attorney closed his eyes. This court is referring evidence of forgery and financial misconduct to the district attorney's office immediately. Marcus stared straight ahead without moving. And pending investigation, Mr. Carter's contractor license will be suspended. The room stayed silent after that. No dramatic outburst. No final defense. Just the sound of papers sliding across the judge's desk while Marcus realized everything he built was collapsing publicly. Outside the courthouse, reporters rushed past Ronelle to surround Marcus near the front steps. Questions flew at him from every direction. Did you forge your sister's signature? Did you steal the insurance funds? Are criminal charges being filed? For the first time in his life, Marcus couldn't control the story people told about him. Ronelle stepped down the courthouse stairs, quietly holding copies of the restored estate documents against her chest. Behind barricades, she could hear Marcus shouting her name. She kept walking. Weeks later, demolition crews finally cleared the burned remains of the old house legally and properly. Ronelle stood beside architects reviewing rebuilding plans instead of eviction notices. Neighbors who once avoided her slowly started apologizing. We believed Marcus because he always sounded so sure of himself, one admitted quietly. Ronelle didn't argue with them. She understood now how easily confidence could look like truth. In her temporary apartment, she kept one smoke-damaged family photo on the kitchen counter. Not to remember the fire, to remember how close she came to losing everything because she trusted the wrong person. Months later, Ronelle stood inside the rebuilt foundation of her future home when a notification appeared on her phone. The first transfer from the recovered trust account had finally arrived. Sunlight poured across the concrete floor while construction workers moved around the property behind her. For the first time since the fire, the future didn't feel frightening. It felt hers. And standing there where the ashes used to be, Ronelle quietly whispered the truth she finally understood. The night my house burned down, I thought I lost everything. But the truth buried under the ashes destroyed the only person who tried to take it from me.